Divination. People have hung around me for a little bit. Mostly people know this. Divination generally consists of playing random games of chance with the idea that that tells you what God wants from you. Let me just start again. You guys are focused on whatever. Divination consists of playing games of chance to figure out what God wants. Did you guys follow this? So let's say if you wanted to figure out what God wanted for you to do and you rolled dice, or you did the magic 8-ball, people would think that was just utterly preposterous, right? Or if you just took a deck of cards, playing cards, 52 cards, and just shuffled them up, picked out a card, like, this is what God wants from me right now. You following? I think an all-good, all-powerful deity could come up with a better way to communicate with the faithful than influencing the laws of physics to skew random games of chance. Did you guys follow that? That's why I'm not so much into divination. Then, people are going to read tea leaves or the clouds. It just gets so random. People just do whatever they want to do and say whatever they want to say. A little less what do I want to say? A little less comfortable people would be critiquing divination would be, let's say, throwing a tarot. You follow? But what's a tarot? It's a deck of cards. So how is it any different than your random deck of cards in Vegas? Did you guys follow that? Did you follow that critique? If we're hating on the cards from Vegas, how does the tarot become more spiritual? Because it's from, wherever it's from. I don't even know where it's from. I want to say Romania, but it's probably like from India. Who knows? You know where it's from?
From France.
There you go. French. Only thing they did right was French fries. They didn't make French fries. How is it any more spiritual? Because the French did it, and they didn't. It wasn't Vegas. For all we know, the 52 playing cards is as old as the tarot. Who even knows? So, you could throw an I Ching. How's that different than rolling dice? I think Krishna can come up with a better system for communicating with you than influencing random games of chance. In fact, I think people who want to play random games of chance to figure out what God wants from them, I think those people are mentally ill. I think they're mentally ill. I think they're sincere and mentally ill, which is a bad combination. Sincere people being mentally ill is a serious problem. That sincerity sometimes makes things way worse because they get all justified, self-righteous, and think they found the way, the truth, and the light, and terrible things happen if you look at the history of religion. I mean, I don't flip a coin when I want to know what Krishna wants me to do. I might flip a coin over where to go for dinner. But I'm definitely not going to flip a coin to figure out what Krishna's looking for me to do. I'm definitely not going to roll dice. And I'm definitely not going to pick a card, any card. Did you guys follow that? The thing is, the pick a card, any card is tarot, and the roll in the dice is the I Ching. And so what are you going to do? Because the very thing that makes perfect sense to critique stupid Vegas games of chance and think that that's what God wants from you. How is that any different with these other systems of divination? Then reading tea leaves or bones or clouds in the sky or whatever, that just, it's like the, what's that called? The Rorschach blots. The ink blots. They read it and they tell you what they think. Why not just call them a therapist and let them just honestly tell you what they think instead of trying to tell you it's in the ink blot? Like, see, the ink blot's saying this. It's not me. Why not just go to a therapist? Spill your guts and have them give you some good advice. Instead of them reading your palm or an ink blot or tea leaves or bones. Did you guys follow that? Like, we see the man in the moon, but in India they see a rabbit in the moon. I can see both. I think they've got just as much of a argument for a rabbit in the moon as we do for a man in the moon. Shashank is a name for the moon in Sanskrit. It means rabbit marked. So, I think it's, I don't think it's benign. I don't think it's benign. I think it's dangerous. I think people are sincere when they go for the systems of divination. I think they're mentally ill because they haven't done the math to realize, wait a second, I'm rolling dice. And I think, what would it make God that that's the way he spoke to his chosen people through random games of chance? What kind of a spastic deity are we talking about at this point? Couldn't come up with a better system? You follow? What does it say about the nature of the world? What does it say about the goodness of divinity or the assuredness of divinity? It just all comes down to a random game of chance. It's like a chaotic world where God's playing English with the dice. It's just, it really doesn't speak well of a deity that would create a world where the best way to communicate was to roll dice on the regular, to make major life decisions. I also have this same repulsion towards people who randomly open a spiritual text and just flip through the pages and open up to a page and think that God's speaking to them through a page. It's the same phenomenon. Given that you have a spiritual text with chapters and verses and a chronology and a conversation and an evolution of ideas and thoughts, maybe your deity is a logical, clear-thinking individual who wants you to read through the sacred teachings so that you'll be able to understand them in a systematic and comprehensive way, and that's why systematic and comprehensive texts are written. Did you guys follow this? You'd be way better off making that argument if you had a book of just random sayings, and that was your sacred text. Of course, anyway, I don't want to get too into this. I have a different direction I want to go in, but if you look at the universe, we find that the universe is ordered, it's logical, it's reasonable, it makes sense, it has laws of physics. which apply in all circumstances in a standardized way that's measurable. Now, if there's something that made all that, what does it say about the thing or person that made all that the creation of the Lord is this ordered, reasonable, systematic, logical universe? Did you guys follow that? If that's going to say something about the deity, it's going to say the deity has those qualities as well. The very structure, the very noticeable structure of the universe. Did you come in to hear my class or to make deity jewelry for the deities? Okay, that's fine. No problem. I knew it was too good to be true. Yeah, I mean, there was this idea that the Logos was Theos. Logos, the supreme logic, was Theos, was God. That's in the book of John. This idea was there amongst the ancient Greeks, and it filtered down into Christianity. It's there in many teachings. That the ordered universe is a symptom of an ordered deity. And as you approach perfection and perfect symmetry, then you're actually approaching divinity. If that's the case, then a spastic book of random sayings was definitely not revealed by God. You get it? You understand the point? So if you did find a spastic book of random saying, and therefore you came up with a religion that you just roll the dice, open the book and flip through the pages, the very nature of the universe would argue against that actually having come from God. It way more likely came from some schizophrenic person, some jumbled, muddled thinking person. You guys follow this? I'll get to critiquing astrology in a minute. I'm on my way there. Astrology is not going to escape this one either. And so if you've got a systematic text, and if you don't, then that's not divinely inspired. That was my argument. But if you've got a systematic text, why would you then unsystematically and spastically go through it in order to achieve divine revelation? Why wouldn't you just follow the instructions on the book and read through it, get a comprehensive knowledge, and then use that to think about the world in an enlightened way? Did you guys follow that? All right, so don't go to Vegas and play craps to know what Krishna wants you to do. Right? And also don't throw on I Ching. Rorschach. God, I feel like I'm an idiot. Rorschach ink blots. Instead of doing that or looking at bones or tea leaves or whatever other stuff people do, I think they used to scramble up the intestines of different animals. Entrails of animals, that was another big one. Looking at the entrails of animals, the intestines of animals, the mangled intestines of animals. Or clouds in the sky. Go get a therapist. Go get a therapist because you thought that was a good thing to do. And go get a therapist just so somebody who knows you can actually, and is an elder, can give you advice based on your actual life instead of chicken guts. That's how God's going to reach out to us, through chicken guts and bones and tea leaves and clouds. You follow? Or, I don't know, playing marbles, throwing jacks. You guys follow me? Okay. And when we look at the world is ordered, therefore our deity should be ordered. Therefore, if you have a spastic bunch of spiritual sayings, they're probably not spiritual after all. It's probably just a bunch of fortune cookies put together in a book. By the way, they did a thing where they took spiritual words and put them into a random number generator and then made sayings and put them out on social media, and they did quite well. It was like take like 3 words, I don't know, think up magic, something like that, and they would just put that out there, and people were digging it. And a lot of them sounded a lot like Deepak Chopra, who, he's kind of fallen by the wayside. He's sort of an old timer at this point. He was all the rage for a minute. They took spiritual words, like 1,000 of them, stuck them into a random number generator, and then generated sayings of 3 or 4 words randomly. Nobody made those sayings, unless that's how you communicate with God. It's a random number generator, which is just as logical as all the other stuff we've been looking at. And then those sayings were popular on social media. There's a university, I think it was in Canada, that did this. Astrology is problematic because sometimes you get 2 people born in a hospital at the same time, within a couple minutes of each other, which doesn't make any difference from an astrological point of view. And then you look at those 2 charts of those 2 exactly the same individuals, and you compare their lives, and they have radically different lives. Or you get twins born within a couple minutes of each other, and they have radically different lives. Like one of them might die right after childbirth, the other one lives for 100 years. Now, resist the temptation to just die a death of 1,000 cuts by thinking up ever more elaborate ways to justify that belief, and figure out how unreasonable it is to take a look at 2 people born in the same hospital with totally different lives, totally different parts of the world, some of whom die like very, very quickly, and other ones who live a long time, and try to say somehow or other that's the same life. Well, if that's the case, then astrology tells you nothing, because anybody's life could be made to match up with any chart, because you just have to get creative enough, and now you're back to that ink blot. Did you guys follow that? If it's not that, then you're left with a predetermined destination based on where you were born. Of course, that totally mitigates free will. Like, it's a big problem with free will. The idea that God can actually even act in this world in miraculous, amazing ways and put things, also that kind of defeats the idea of an omnipotent deity. Would an omnipotent deity who is also omnibenevolent, an all-powerful, all-loving God, leave out the potential to change your stars? Leave out the potential to change your fate? Maybe interface, maybe do something miraculous, maybe make some miracles happen in your life? Would an all-good, all-powerful deity, first of all, an all-powerful deity could do that. An all-good God would want to do that if you open the door for it. And so how can you reconcile the kind of hard determinism that you get with astrology with an all-good, all-powerful deity? If it's not determinism, then what does it become? It's either A, a therapist, or B, it's deterministic, or C, it's illogical, because it has 2 people having the same life blueprint, even though they might live drastically different lives, and now you got to fit a square peg into a round hole to make sense out of it. And D, it's a critique of an all-good, all-powerful God, because why would Krishna make the world like that? If we can flex and move and change, wouldn't our stars change with that? In which case, spending all your time studying stars is a total waste, because you could be spending your time living an empowered life and changing your stars for the better. But instead of doing that, you're sitting around doing nothing, paying somebody a bunch of money, some entrepreneurial spirit, a bunch of money. You guys following this? Then there's like the fun where you go to 2 astrologers and they give you totally different reads of your chart. That's a whole nother one. Anyway, I'm a bit of a hater when it comes to divination. I prefer the systematic approach, the systematic deity in a systematic universe. I prefer the empowered approach where you do your part, leave the door open for God to help out, not keep him on a train schedule with some deterministic map he's got to follow. And if there was some determinism in the universe, and I think there is a whole heck of a lot, I like genetics for that. I think that's a good play. Look at your genetics. Look at the situation you were born into, and have that help you understand something about what you got dealt to you, what hand you got dealt to you by the deck of life. And then once you grasp that, go ahead and stretch it as far as you can in a bunch of really wonderful directions by living an empowered life and focusing on that instead of the disempowerment that inevitably comes from people who spastically go to all these diviners to figure out what they're supposed to do. I think it's a mental health disorder. And I think such people are sincere. And I think they'd be much better served by finding a systematic, comprehensive, well thought out, reasonable, logical tradition, studying it, becoming enlightened, and then navigating life from that enlightened perspective. Having a therapist. Instead of reading guts, they can spill their guts to a therapist and then get good, sagacious advice. Get good advice. And really do something wonderful in this world. Did you guys follow this? All right, that was my intro. I've got an actual class for you now. Does anybody want to argue with me on my intro? I know you guys all go to astrologers because I talked to you about it. So I know that there's a lot of mentally disordered people. You know, there's eating disorders. Like you have a legitimate eating disorder, bulimia or anorexia, whatever the case may be. Then there's disorderly eating. You don't necessarily have an eating disorder per se, but you do engage in disorderly eating, which is unhealthy. So there's mental illness. You follow? Like the person has a mental health disorder. I think this is more in the realm of disordered thinking, a disordered mind, as opposed to having a mental disorder. It's a symptom of a disordered mind. Did you guys follow that? Yeah. Come in late and you're going to challenge me? All right, let's hear it.
Well, I know that you've had some pretty mystical experiences with her.
Sure, okay. My wife is challenging me that I myself have gone to see diviners on occasion and had some pretty mystical experiences. So she's challenging me with myself. It's actually, that's the right play. That's a good, solid argument, is you show my hypocrisy. I mean, I thought of a lot of dumb things when I was young, now grown up. So I used to wear diapers too, so I'm not wearing them now. That's not actually my answer, but that is the general response when somebody critiques you for the way you used to think, but you don't think that way anymore. I have experienced mystical people in my life. And I met a mystical palm reader in a village in rural India that I was walking through. We didn't stop there. I got some water there. You got your hand up? I'll get you in a sec. Just so you don't have to sit there the whole time. I got you. I was walking through a village in India by foot. I sat down somewhere to chill for a second. Some guy sat down next to me, asked to read my palm, looked at my palm, and said, "Oh, you got in a motorcycle accident 3 years ago." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, you're going to get married in 3 years." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I did." So he told me something from my past. He said, "The motorcycle accident is what led you to become a monk?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, you're going to get married in 3 years." And then he got up and walked off. And he looked at my palm, said those two things to me, something from my past, like very specific, something from my future, very specific. The past was true, the future was true. He got up and walked off, didn't give him any money, didn't know him, in the middle of nowhere, never saw him again. Nobody in my crew even knew that about the motorcycle accident. I'd never even thought about it in those exact terms. I now think about the pivotal role the motorcycle accident played in my life as a result of him telling me and me reflecting back on it and realizing how pivotal it was. You follow? So I had that one happen. How do you explain that one? I can't. Been trying for 30 years. Can't figure that one out. Had another one of my teachers. This is like one of my teachers of our sacred tradition. I went into his room to tell him something about my life I had never told anybody for my whole life. Walked into the room. He was busy doing something. He looked up at me and goes, "I'm busy. Please go away now. It's disturbing my mind. You came to tell me this, this, and this. I know it. Here's what I think. Now go." How do you explain that one? A hyper-specific detail of my childhood I'd never shared with anybody. He told me what that was and then gave me some advice and then dismissed me without me speaking a word. Just I walked in the room. And he was busy. So it wasn't even like he owned it out and figured it out. It was like he was too busy to do the normal rapport. And so he just read my mind and gave me advice and dismissed me. How do you explain that one? Can't explain that one. So I've had a couple of really far out mystical experiences. I've also had a bunch of cheesy cold readers try to take advantage of me over the decades as well. I went and met with the biggest Ghostbuster in the Hare Krishna movement. It's like this super famous guy who would do exorcisms and do yagnas and super famous. He treated a bunch of ISKCON gurus. He used to give them Ayurvedic powders, but it turns out they were psychotropics that he was grinding up and putting into like a little newspaper fold and giving it to people and like heavily medicating them. Anyway, I thought the guy was full of it. So my friends brought me to him and I was like to debunk him. And he knew I was challenging him, so he was ready for battle. So I came in and he owned me out and did a few little things. And he's tried to start to psychoanalyze me. He said, you have a problem with lust. You have a problem with masturbation. And I said to him, I think I was 23. I said to him, I haven't masturbated in 7 years. What are you talking about? And he was like shook. Because you figure a white kid in India, a monk, probably has a problem controlling himself, right? So then I was like, now I know you're full of it. Because it was such an obvious, just kind of standard, cheap attempt at a cold read. You follow? You have a mother and a father. You know what I mean? You grew up. You know what I mean? It was like, he's trying to hit me with something like that. That was just so easy. And he happened to be wrong. He had it 100% wrong. And then once that happened, and he just fumbled, made a fool out of himself, and confirmed what I thought, and then got exposed like a year later that he was giving people drugs and got run out of ISKCON. Now nobody will give him 2 paisa. So I've had that happen too. So I've been on both sides of the equation. I think there's mystical people. I do not think it's the palm reading or the astrology which makes them mystical. I think they're just mystical people in touch with something higher, with some sort of subtle plane of knowledge, and they just use that methodology as their mechanism. But it's not the methodology, it's them. I think there's mystical people out there. I think there's great cold readers out there. I think there's great therapists out there. I think there's ultra perceptive people out there. And I think there's just some straight up mystics out there. And I'm not even into that. That's parlor tricks. I want to embrace God. My goal is to embrace God, not read somebody's mind. If I want to become a mind reader, then those guys will be my guru. But I don't want to become a mind reader. I want to embrace God. So I want to find people who are embracing God and learn that art from them. So even though I do think there's mystical people, I don't think it's that system of divination that makes them mystical. I think they just bring the mystic. And anyway, that's not what gets me going. That doesn't get me up in the morning. What gets me up in the morning is seeing God. Having a divine communion. That's the ultimate mysticism. That's a miracle. There's a famous story about Rasik Ananda. He's an Odishan guru some centuries ago. He was chanting japa with his disciples and chewing on a stick. Indians chew on a stick instead of a toothbrush. They get a neem stick and they kind of fray the edges a little bit and then they chew on it and it becomes like dental floss. And it's also antiseptic, and they just kind of chew on it. It's like, and you know, it comes apart on the edge you're chewing on it, and so then it becomes like a floss brush type thing. You just throw it away and get a new one. It's like clay pots to eat out of. You eat, you throw it away, and next season it's gone. It's become earth again. You can start all over again. So he was chewing on this thing, neem stick, and he was chanting japa, and his disciples came in and he said, Guru Maharaj, there is some tantric out there, like with a tiger, and they're like controlling the tiger. And he was like, yeah, this is not so important, just chant japa, Hare Krishna. And they came back and, Guru Maharaj, they're riding on the tiger now. He's like, this is not important, just sit and chant japa. Guru Maharaj, they're flying on the tiger. The tiger is flying in the air, and they're on the tiger. And he's like, are they? And he threw down the stick he was chewing, and he rode around the room on the stick, and then came back down and sat down and goes, now chant. Somebody came to Prabhupada one time and they said, can you make an apple appear? And Prabhupada said, we have 100 temples. In every temple we have a kitchen. In every kitchen we have a refrigerator. And in every refrigerator there are so many apples. He goes, but the real magic is you look at them. You look at these people changing their lives, becoming better people. That's the magic. You want to ask me about my magic? That's my magic. We're looking for cheap things because we've never seen the real thing. We're looking at broken glass. We haven't learned to differentiate the difference between that and a diamond. We're attracted by fancy colors, not actual value. How was that? Can it wait? Yeah, I want to get to my class. You know what? No, you waited long enough. What do you got for me?
I was going to say about the astrology that do you think that maybe sometimes it could be used as a stepping stone to a higher consciousness because sometimes
I'm with you.
people don't have the right words.
I agree with you, sure. I mean, I took LSD and it opened my eyes to a bunch of stuff, so I'm not going to knock astrology. I did all sorts of stuff that opened my eyes. Even traumatic experiences sometimes open your eyes. So certainly it makes you think there's something else going on out there. Yeah, I don't think that's wrong. I would say this in response.
More in a way of that you're putting good words that have been written by someone that thought about them into your cannot give yourself those good words.
I don't think that's bad either. So I think the idea of
Give yourself the good words that you are receiving from something.
Sure. So I think the idea that there's something bigger out there than just me has some value. I think then finding some teaching or some higher system of knowledge than what you currently have as a stepping stone to something even bigger, I think that works too. I think either one of those works. Here's my critique. So my critique isn't a hard critique. It's going to sound hard in a second. But I have some appreciation for what you said. So it's actually a soft critique. Why not just give people the real thing? Hang on, slow down, and just let me do my thing. Let me do my thing. Why not just give people the real thing? Somebody should be out there giving people the real thing. It's like, hey, if you're not willing to take medicine, let me make you take this other medicine. But the same mechanism of accepting a higher power, of accepting something above yourself, because you have to accept words of somebody above you. So you're swallowing the medicine. So like, let me give you some shitty medicine. I can say that because I'm at a temple. This is like a outreach center. I'm going to give you some crappy medicine that's not actually going to heal you. And the mechanism by which I give you that crappy medicine is it's a liquid form that you have to swallow. You follow? But I could also give you real medicine that's actually going to cure you. And well, why not give the real medicine? Because people aren't ready. They can't swallow that medicine. But they have to swallow this medicine because you said they have to accept somebody above them, accept the words of somebody else and think about something higher. So given that they already have to do that, why not hit them with the real thing and cure them? And at least there should be a group of people out there fronting that. At least there should be a group of people out there representing that. And endorsing that. And I find that people don't need as many stepping stones as we think. And if they're sincere enough to accept a higher power, why not give them a logical, reasonable one instead of a spastic one they're ultimately going to have to stop believing in at some point? That's not going to make sense in the long run. Why not take the trouble to teach people something which is going to be foundational and a building block to a wonderful life? Instead of giving them a house of cards they're going to have to ultimately get rid of, in toto, practically speaking, to come over to the truth. And given that they got to accept the higher power either way, and they have to take somebody on as a teacher either way, and put their faith in somebody either way, why not do something real with permanent value? So although my critique of what you said was really aggressive, I actually agree with you. I just think there should always be a crew of people in the world that speak it like it is. And I think that the truth is the most attractive. It's the most seductive. It's the most intriguing. And I think what happens is people are a little bit intrigued by a little bit of truth, and they get a lot intrigued by a lot of truth. Now there might be there is room within that for many different revelations and nuanced understandings of truth from many different teachers with many different teaching styles. But it gets rid of divination and it focuses on theology and philosophy and a comprehensive systematic approach to life. That should be there for everybody. Within that, there's room for many different revelations and conceptions of divinity that can also be compared and contrasted. And there's also room for many different teaching styles. I have a little bit of an in-your-face teaching style. Not for everybody. And so there's room for different teaching styles, and there's room for different revelations. I don't think that we should put divination and these partial, spastic, disordered thinking methodologies in the same universe with that. One is called truth, the other one's not. It might have little bits of truth mixed in, but there's too much falsity in it as well. It becomes unstable. Like if you put too much water in your concrete, it just won't hold up. It doesn't harden up properly. Won't hold up. So that's another little angle where I think, especially if you get into different styles and different revelations, I think there's a lot more room for that, provided they're systematic and comprehensive and logical and philosophically astute, and they don't create disordered thinking and don't ultimately create a house of cards. Let me give you an example. There's 4 verses in the Gita, which for the last 1,500 years, scores and scores of commentators, probably hundreds of commentators, have identified as the Chatushloki, the 4 verses that make up the core of the Gita's teaching. And it's almost like a book within a book. And this is a very standard thing that's done in Sanskrit literature. They'll have a book within a book. They'll have a little tiny couple of statements, 4 verses, sometimes 1, a Paribhasa Sutra, sometimes 4, a Chatushloki, and it's the whole book in one little chunk. So it's almost like the book itself is an exploration in a deeper way of this tiny core book, and that little core you can memorize and carry around with you for life. And if you understand that core, you understand the whole book. And it shows just an incredible degree of elegance and systematic thinking that such things are done. And it really lets you know that you're dealing with an authentic work, because there's congruence. That's how long it should take all you turn your phone off. It should be, it shows congruence and symmetry. Do you guys follow this? All right, so here are the verses. And there's a particular angle I want to hit with these verses today. And we're tight on time. So I'm going to go fast. I'm going to go through all 4 verses. And then we're going to explore this particular angle. There's a lot of angles you can take to analyzing these verses. I want to hit a particular angle. So listen up, because I want to have a little feedback from you guys. Here we go. Aham sarvasya prabhava. I am the source of everything. Krishna speaking, obviously. Mata savam pravartate. Everything is energized by me and proceeds from me. I am the source of all the stuff of this universe, and I'm also the energy that moves and animates all the stuff of this universe. Iti matva bhajante mam. They worship me, having understood this. Buddha bhava samanvita. The wise people, having understood this, worship me with all their hearts. They're wise and they love me. Head and heart together. I'm the source of everything, all the matter and all the energy in this world. I'm the way and the weft of the cosmos. Understanding that truth, wise people, having understood this, worship me with love. How do they worship me? The next verse tells you. Mat-chitta, mat-kata prana. They think of me and they dedicate their lives to me. You might notice the word prana, like pranayam. Madgata prana. Their life is gone to me. I am the goal of their life. Mat means me. Mat-chitta, mat-gata prana. Bodhayantas parasparam. They enlighten one another about me. Bodha, so we get the word Buddha from. Same root. Bodhayantas parasparam. They enlighten one another about me. Katayantas chamam nityam. They talk about me all the time. Tushanti cha ramanti cha. They become totally satisfied and ecstatic by doing this. They become satisfied and peaceful, and they become ecstatic. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. For those people who are always yogad to me in love. They love me and they're yogad to me in love. They're yukta, they're yoga, they're united with me in love. For those people who by worshiping me in the way I said, having understood me as I've described myself, for those people, tadami buddhi yogam tvam yena mamupayantite. I enlighten them. I give them divine knowledge. Buddhi yoga, same word, buddh. I give them intelligence or enlightenment by which they can come even closer to me. Tesham, again, let's say for those people who are worshiping me like this. Tesham evanukam partamahama jnana jam tamaha nashayam yatma bhavasto jnana dipena bhashta. For those people, I destroy the darkness of ignorance within their hearts with a shining lamp of knowledge out of extreme compassion and mercy on them. I'm the source of everything. Everything comes from me. Having understood that, wise people worship me with all their hearts. They do so by thinking of me, making me the goal of their life, enlightening one another about me, always talking about me, and deriving great satisfaction and joy from doing so. For those people who are always yoked to me in love, I give them divine enlightenment by which they can come even closer to me. For those people, I destroy the darkness of ignorance in their heart with the shining lamp of knowledge, because I'm in their heart and I can do that for them. Out of compassion, and my heart shakes for them, and out of mercy for them, I do so. Okay? Those are the 4 verses in Sanskrit and English. I gave you guys a couple of translations, like once all the way through, and I broke it down for you guys too. Here's what I like about these verses. Krishna starts us off. He starts us off. He tells us that he's the source of everything which exists. Pondering that reality, that there's a source of everything which exists, naturally makes you want to love God and serve. Because to know him is to love him. So Krishna starts things off by creating a universe, by giving you consciousness, by giving you the ability to think. You follow? Those are some pretty big gifts. Like, what did you do to earn your consciousness? To earn your body? To earn your ability to think? To earn your ability to act? You just got gifted that. In this perfectly working world. In this totally systematic universe, which has rules set up, and at the same time gives you some room to breathe and you can do what you want to do. That's a mega gift. Huge gift. Like the most valuable thing anybody's ever been given, you got given. You guys following this? And so Krishna starts the ball off. He's not asking you to just blindly love him. He starts the ball off by giving you a universe and consciousness and existence and the ability to act. You follow? And if you contemplate that deeply enough and systematically enough and thoughtfully enough and maybe with a little bit of help to really think it through so you don't just wind up, falling off a cliff into some sort of nihilism or atheism. You should really think about the nature of consciousness, the irreducibility of consciousness, how there's a source of everything. That source must also be conscious. You really spend some time with it. You'll end up wanting to worship Krishna. Then you got to do your part. Because we don't live in a monergistic world. We live in a synergistic world. And now you got to step up to the plate and do something. Krishna can't do it all because you got free will. And now you got to step up and you got to make moves. You don't have to make moves blindly. Something was given to you. The ability to make moves was given to you. The ability to think about the moves you make in an orderly universe. And now you got to make some moves. And if you choose to turn towards divinity and you make that your move and you systematically do your part to move towards divinity with the legs and the arms and the mind and the words that God gave you, then the result of that is you open a door and Krishna can give you more because you've opened the door for it. And without being abusive and compromising your free will, Krishna can give you enlightenment and help you. Illuminate the darkness of your heart. Make some amazing things happen in your life. And with that, you're empowered to move even closer. Yena mamupayanti te. And by that enlightenment, they can move even closer to me. So what I like about this verse, these 4 verses, is there is a really nice balance of what's our responsibility and what's God's responsibility. There's a real orderly, reasonable, reciprocal universe that's being described, where there's enough information on the front end to get us going, but then we have to step up and move forward progressively. And that act opens the door for further revelation, which then opens the door for us to move forward even more concretely and deeply and profoundly. And there's this reciprocity and this synergism between the deity and the devotee, back and forth, moving forward. That's an example of systematic theology that's not disempowering, that doesn't leave things up to blind chance, that isn't just divination, that's not spastic and disordered, that honors our free will, that requires us to step forward, it requires us to take a risk. But Krishna takes the risk first. By creating this beautiful world and all of us and giving us the ability to act as moral agents, Krishna takes the first step. The Police came out with a song when I was a kid. If you love someone, set them free. I mean, I know they ripped off that lyric from somebody else, like Shakespeare or somebody. You know that song? Free, free, set them free, set them free. You know that song? If you love someone, set them free, 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 set them free. You know the song? I'm showing my age. Came out in the 80s, right when MTV hit. Like 83, 84, something like that. I think MTV hit in 81, so it was like a couple of years afterwards. So, Krishna sets us free. There's an act of love right there. You understand that. You really think about, you really contemplate your existence. And you can find good, solid reasons to turn towards divinity. Which then opens the door for even more magic to happen. Which then opens the door for you to move forward. And I think there's this really nice, reasonable theology encapsulated in these verses. And really the core of theology. The core of what it means to have free will. The core of what an all-good, all-powerful deity looks like. In many ways, I don't think these verses are even culturally specific. I think these verses are true in every religion. There's a deity that created everything, including you. Understanding that, you're motivated to turn towards that deity with love and devotion, as well as having intellectually understood, you satisfy both your head and your heart. That willingness on your part to turn towards divinity in practical ways by using the senses and the body that you were given to then become an instrument of change and upliftment for the rest of the world as a service to the divine, then opens the door for further revelation to come and for you to come even closer. And there may be certain things you can't do because you're not omnipotent, but then you have an omnipotent friend who's living in your heart with you. And then Krishna finishes things up for you. And that's divine grace. But sometimes divine grace is like you're just going to do nothing, and it's all Krishna's responsibility. There's that sort of weakness sometimes when people get into divine grace. I know when people get into divination, there's also this just sort of, I'm just a passenger, I can't do anything. And if you're an atheist, it's like I'm doing everything. Or even if you're a theist, but you're a functional atheist, it's like I'm doing everything, I never make room for divinity. And so right there's a sweet spot in between all of those pitfalls. Off the cliff's edge, there's a razor's edge you can walk. And that's the razor's edge of this synergistic understanding of reality, where you have your part and the divine has their part, and both can be reasonable and systematic and logical and make good sense and leave room for magic and leave room for the ultimate mystical experience. Okay, give me some feedback. And yell at me because we're still live. Yeah, what do you got?
Going back to the mystic palm reader, that knew
you're nowhere near loud enough. I mean, like, actually yell at me. Talk to me like this. Just make it easy. Otherwise, I gotta repeat everything, and that kind of bums me out.
So for the mystic palm reader that told you that you were going to get married in 3 years, where does your free will come into that?
I mean, I didn't have to get married.
But he knew that you were going to get married in 3 years.
Yeah, I don't think that... Did you hear the question, Kat? I don't think we live in a totally non-deterministic world. For instance, how tall are you?
5'7".
You're 5'7". You're not going to be 6 foot, bro. Not going to happen. Also, no matter how hard I and 99.9999% of the population tries, we will not be able to do the extreme acrobatic martial arts that you do. You're truly gifted. You didn't just work hard. You got some kind of fast twitch, explosive, posterior chain stuff, and you worked hard. You follow? And your small little frame, which might not do you so well in a fight, does do you well for the incredible feats of gymnastics that you're capable of doing. My man is the #1 nunchuck guy on the planet. And I'm not just saying that. He showed me a video. I was like, okay, you're the #1 nunchuck guy on the planet. Plus he won the award. And then he's also in the top 10 freestyling, tricking, real life wire act martial arts out of a Chinese movie, but there's no wires. He just flips 87 times in the air and then lands on his finger and flips again. It's unbelievable what he does. So there is some determinism there. There might be certain things you have to experience, certain things you have to go through, because you're not coming into this world naked. But there's a lot of room to breathe. Maybe my marriage was something I had to go through. But who I chose to marry, that's a whole nother ballgame. Maybe I didn't have to get married. I don't think I had to get married. I don't feel like I was predetermined to get married. I feel like maybe I was going to, I feel like I chose that. My guru told me, don't get married. I didn't want to get married. But as I got older, I thought, no, I need to get married. I want to get married. I changed my mind. I met my wife. I fell in love with her. And I was like, you know what? I'd like to be married to this woman and have a group of kids. So maybe he could see what I was probably going to choose to do. Maybe he guessed. Maybe there's some sense in which I had to go through that. And if I didn't go through that, it was going to happen to me anyway. I can't know. That's beyond my ability to know. But I don't feel like that now creates a hard determinism. I also remain fully convinced that if I'd chosen to be a monk, I could have been a monk. So, there's my kid always chooses chocolate ice cream. Does that mean I force him to choose chocolate ice cream? No, that just means I'm smart and I know he's going to choose chocolate ice cream because I've watched him choose ice cream a bunch of times. He never goes for the vanilla or the licorice or the strawberry. I was always that dude who went for the weird flavors of ice cream. My brother gives me heat about this all the time. I would have daiquiri flavored ice cream from, that blue one they have at Baskin Robbins, or I get licorice, which was black. I get all these, every weird flavor you could possibly come up with. I was rocking those. And so my brother still mocks me about it. I'm 49. My brother still gives me guff about it at least once or twice a year in front of people. Remember all those lame ice creams you used to eat? Anyway. Just because my brother knew what flavor I was going to choose, or I knew he was a gold medal ribbon guy, just because I knew what flavor he was going to choose, that doesn't mean I made him choose that. That doesn't mean he couldn't have chosen something else. It might just mean I'm really smart. So maybe he could see what was most likely going to happen based on my energy. But the idea that I was forced to get married against my will 3 years later, I just don't see that, man. Because I chose. So it leaves me in the realm of thinking maybe he was just really smart and could see through space and time to what I was most probably going to choose, but not in a way that actually predetermined reality, more in a way that understood what was most probably going to happen based on the fabric that was presented to him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like if you see somebody sawing a branch off on a tree and they're sitting here and they're sawing the branch, and you're going to fall. It's like they could stop sawing the branch, you follow, or their blade could break. But if everything goes according to plan and they keep doing this, then this is going to drop at some point. And so it more becomes an awareness of movement as opposed to an actual fully predetermined reality. I have a real hard time with a predetermined reality where I have no free will, simply because I experience free will all the time. So if you want to convince me I don't have free will, the burden of evidence is on you, because I have this incorrigible, self-evident empirically verifiable, regular experience of free will since I was born. So if you want to convince me that nothing exists, go for it, but it's a pretty high, like there's a pretty big burden of proof because I'm sitting here experiencing reality. You follow? And then your brain in the vat argument, which is what that argument is, nothing is existing. And so the free will, no free will, would be like a brain in the vat argument. The problem with the brain in the vat argument, do you guys know what the brain in the vat argument is? It's the Matrix, but the Matrix was a philosophical argument that was made before the movie was made, which is probably before you guys' time anyway. I think you guys were born when the Matrix came out. But there was a movie where everybody was like in a tub, in like an amniotic sac, and they were just having a virtual reality experience of the world. It's the brain in the vat problem. So how do you know that anything's real and you're not just a brain in a vat? You follow? How do you know that free will is real and you're not just having a fake experience of free will? Did you follow? Here's the problem with that argument. You would have to account for everything the normal I do have free will argument accounts for. Did you follow that? Let me say it again. You would have to account for all the details of my world where I do have free will, and then you have to add an extra point of reality to it, which was namely that I'm a brain in the vat and it's all being done virtually. But why would I not, with Occam's razor, take the simpler argument? Because you have to account for everything that's in my simple argument and then add this weird appendage for no reason. And that becomes a ghost in the machine. It becomes an inelegant argument. Although you could fathom it, it's a more complicated argument, therefore it's less reasonable, and therefore there's no reason to accept it. Unless you give me some reason why that's superior, it just becomes an argument that has all my stuff plus an extra random appendage. Did you follow that? Hey, if you want to be able to jump really high in the air, you have to wear shoes. You wear shoes? Let's pretend you did. So you got to wear shoes. So you have to lace up your laces and tie your shoes tight and make sure they're like fit you well so that you can go and do your tricking parkour stuff on a concrete surface, whatever, right? But then you also have to sprinkle some magic fairy dust on top of your shoes so they'll stay on. You follow? Does that make sense? So, but you can do it without the magic fairy dust and it works just as well. So why add the ghost in the machine extra thing on top of it? The magic fairy dust isn't in lieu of wearing shoes. You have to wear the shoes. They seem like they work in a particular way. You have to lace the laces up in a regular way. You have a regular argument for wearing shoes that makes sense, that's verifiable, that you can see, that you can repeat, and then you sprinkle some fairy dust on it at the end. Why add the fairy dust? It just seems like an unnecessary extra appendage. A ghost in the machine, if you will. Did you follow that? So I'm experiencing free will. If you want to mitigate my free will, someone's ability to predict what I'm going to do doesn't mean I didn't have the free will to choose to do it. It just meant they were sharp and recognized a few patterns ahead. That seems like a very reasonable explanation. To say that they now constructed my reality and I have no free will, that doesn't seem like a reasonable truth to derive from that simple example. Did you guys follow that? That was a little tedious. I'm just going to say it again because I don't like tedious. I like smooth and clean. So I'm just going to force myself to do it again so I do a better job. The guy told me I was going to get married in 3 years. Argument A, I have no free will. My entire experience of free will is an illusion. It was proven by a guy predicting I'm going to get married. You follow? But I mean, I predicted to her, I said, she was crying to me last year, like 13 months ago or something like that, 14 months ago. She was crying to me how lusty and miserable she was and how her life was a nightmare because she couldn't find a guy. And I was just so sick of hearing this nonsense for so many years. I said to her, we will find you a husband, you'll be married, you'll meet your soulmate by the end of the year. You follow? 2 weeks later, they got together. You follow? all right, I kind of like stuck my foot in my mouth and Krishna saved my ass. I mean, I'm cool with that. I made a promise to my student, and she like actually believes me. So when I say this kind of stuff, she actually believes me. I got an even better one going on with Leela, who's not here for some reason. Leela was crying the same thing, and I go, "What do you think? I'm going to find a guy for you in one day? How am I going to find a guy for you in one day?" And the next day, I found her a guy who she's now engaged to marry, and they're getting married on the 4th of December this year. So, I mean, like, I'm doing that stuff in people's lives. Same thing that guy did in my life. I'm doing that stuff in other people's lives. You follow? I'm even like, I'm narrower than that dude. They said you're getting married in 3 years. I'm like, I'm going to find you a guy in one day. Do you follow? He gave himself a 3-year window. But none of that makes me think I'm now the architect of these people's like destiny, and they have no free will, and their free will is just an illusion. And I'm this omnipotent sorcerer who's like solipsistically writing the fabric of reality on a whim. It seems ridiculous. It seems more likely that they were sincere and it was the appropriate time, and maybe I was inspired to say something as well, and maybe we put a little extra energy into that, and maybe it helped, but certainly there's still room in there for them to have free will. So I think the conclusion you reach from that guy predicting my situation is a really absolute conclusion to reach, and the evidence doesn't support it. Did you follow that? Was that a little better? Did that go down a little better the next time? And you start to get into these arguments. I won't go into the brain of that thing. But sometimes people their argument could prove one thing, but they try to make it prove something else, and they sort of extend it, and it becomes like more relation than causation. They don't actually prove causation. They just prove a little bit of relation. Does that make sense? Really? All right. Thank you, IGTV. Adios. You can hang on Facebook. Go ahead.
I just really appreciate the class where you're making